Welcome, our video friends. Appreciate you being with us again today. As I've said many times before, if you have a prayer request, if you make it known to me through either the comment section or through my email address, I'll promise to pray for you. It's one thing we can all do upon this earth who know the Lord is to pray one for another, as the Bible commands us to do. And as great as the Apostle Paul was, he says, "Pray for me, brethren, pray for me." And he gave us several requests to the church that he wrote that letter into, what the details were of his prayer. And he says, "Pray for me," he said, "might be delivered from unreasonable and wicked men, and that a great effectual door, may be opened unto it." And so we all have needs and face trials and situations of life, and we all need the good hand of the Lord upon us. Well, my friends, let's pick up today about the burial of Jacob, closing out on the book of Genesis right here. And it's been a wonderful study. I've greatly enjoyed doing this, and I kind of regret seeing it come to an end. And I'll pick a book in the New Testament to move on to here in another week, maybe even next week. But today we're in chapter 50 of the book of Genesis. "And Joseph fell upon his father's face and wept upon him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father, and the physicians embalmed Israel." And as far as we know, this ancient practice of embalming was first done by the Egyptians. This was like 1700 years BC, before Christ. And I think that they were doing it way before that time as well. But it was a practice that they knew how to do. "And 40 days were fulfilled for him, for so are fulfilled all the days of those that are embalmed. And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days." This all amazes me, how these Egyptians mourned for him these 40 days. I'm sorry, more than that, 70 days, 70 days. That would be 70 days. I missed that number there, but got it now. But so you imagine mourning that long for somebody. Well, they did. They probably flew their flag at half-mast and certain things they didn't do, and all this for these 70 days. "And when the days of his mourning were past, Joseph spake unto the house of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found grace in your eyes, speak, I pray you, in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, saying, Lo, I die in my grave, which I have digged for me in the land of Canaan. There shalt thou bury me. And therefore let me go up, I pray thee, and bury my father, and I will come again. And Pharaoh said, Go up, and bury thy father, according as he made thee swear. And Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt." Now you imagine this funeral procession. I mean, this was a great number of people going a very long distance in that ancient day. Today, by bus or an airplane, wouldn't take you long. But in their day, this was a long way to travel. Several days this journey would took, this funeral procession. "And all the house of Joseph and his brethren and his father's house, only the little ones and their flocks and the herds, they left in the land of Goshen." So you see, about everybody was going. And this is one time, no doubt, that when they said everybody does this, just about everybody there was doing this, going to the funeral of Jacob. It was a great blessing to see this number of people so interested to pay the respects unto Jacob. I mean, this was tremendous. And the Bible says, "And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great company. And they came to the threshing floor of Atad, that is beyond Jordan. And there they mourned with a great and very sore lamentation. And he made a mourning for his father 7 days." Again, a funeral service that goes on for 7 days, a mourning period that went on for 70 days, and a funeral procession that went on several days, getting from the land of Egypt up into the land of Canaan. And so this is very interesting that it's been this long, and a funeral proceeds, and a funeral process, and a funeral all taking care of the funeral. But Jacob was considered that important of a man in the land of Egypt, to where he had only lived 17 years, as is reading about the burial of Jacob. A great man, a great company that went up to bury this man. One of the biggest funeral processions that no doubt has ever been in the earth was when Jacob died. The house of Pharaoh and his servants went up. All the people of Joseph's family went up. And it was a large procession, and this went on for several days. And to where they came to bury him. Then they made, the services went on for 7 days at this place of burial. And we read right here, and his sons carried him into the land of Canaan, and buried him in the cave of the field of Macapeh, which Abraham bought with the field for possession of a burying place of Ephraim the Hittite before Mamre. And Joseph returned into Egypt, he and his brethren, and all that went up with him to bury his father, after he had buried his father. And no doubt, it's a respectful thing to do to respectful people when they die, is to have a decent funeral service. And I've seen funeral processions where the family and friends are following the hearse out to the graveyard, or where they walk from the church out to the cemetery to bury the body. And a lot of you guys have served as pallbearers, as I have more than once, to carry the body into the church, and then from the church perhaps to the grave itself. Excuse me. And a very respectful thing to do is we bury our dead. It's a very respectful thing to do when we go to these funerals and we participate in this. And I like to see them to be an honorable time, respectful time. I don't like to see them be disrespectful, to say the least about it. I don't like to see these to be some kind of a big party and a big drunken sprawl going on. But I like to see them to be respectful times, to honor that individual and to encourage the family. As one preacher told me, said it needs to be a time to preach to the living and to encourage them and their walk with God, and to encourage them in their time of mourning that will soon pass. Now they mourned for Jacob. They loved Jacob. He was the father of many sons, 12 sons. He claimed the 2 of Joseph as being his. And so a large family that he had. At this time, many people in that family. And he was the head of that. And so they had every reason to honor him, even though he had not been a perfect man in his life, as no man is. But they made a point to honor him. Now, I like to see this when honorable men die and are honored properly in our nation. I do appreciate that. And people who have lived ungodly or wickedly and who have done things to hurt our nation, in my opinion, they have no need and no right to an honorable burial, nor any right to be laid in the rotunda of the Capitol. Some of these ungodly people who have done ungodly things, they should not be so treated. But great men that we've had, and I've seen various men, usually our presidents when they die will lie in the rotunda for a period of time, and most of them are worthy of that right because they led our nation, whether we liked them or whether they didn't. They led our nation, such it may have been. But it's a respectful thing to do. I remember when Ronald Reagan died, and his body lied in the rotunda, and many people from around the world came to pay the respects to Ronald Reagan. One of our greatest leaders ever was Ronald Reagan. And I loved him, appreciated him. Wished we had more just like him today. But he was certainly honor to whom honor is due. And that one person certainly would be Ronald Reagan. I remember when Billy Graham died, I think his body laid in the nation's rotunda for a period of time. And many people from around the world came to pay the respects to Billy Graham, who was a great preacher, no doubt, and who no doubt led a lot of people to the Lord Jesus Christ, and held great revival campaigns, and was highly respected across America. I wouldn't agree with everything he said or did, and I'm sure he wouldn't agree with everything I say or do. but no doubt he was certainly a great man, to say the least about him. And I've seen other leaders of other countries die too, who were so respected that they were honored by great funeral processions and great burial proceedings, and worthy of all that. I remember I was just a boy at the time when John F. Kennedy was assassinated. I remember seeing his funeral procession on the news in black and white, probably NBC who covered that, and it was worthy of a man who led our nation, no doubt to that. Of course, there was a dark side to JFK, as many of us would know, but he was still had led our nation and probably had served as well. But yet had a great assembly to pay the respects unto him when he was killed by the assassin's bullets. Well, my friends, and I remember my pastor, Dr. Harold Seitler, and I loved him greatly. He loved me. I loved him. I got along with him. He got along with me. We understood one another. And I was honored to have him as my pastor. And when he died, we sat up in the chapel with his body all night long before the funeral service the next day. And there was people who came from all parts of America through that chapel that night and stand before the casket and paid their respects to a great preacher and a very great man of God. And we loved him. We appreciated him. And I remember in particular that night, as some of us sat in the chapel, they had the deacons, and I was serving on the deacon board there at that time. And they'd asked us to come and stay for an hour and take in rotation to stay with the body. But there were men that sat there all night long and never left the side of his body. They loved him and appreciated him so much. And I remember in particular one man who literally sat there and he cried all night long. I mean, a grown man, probably 60 years old. He sat and he cried there in the pews of the chapel all night long. His love for him was great. And so we have every right to honor those who are honored. I've seen other preachers buried who were honorable men, well deserving of the honor of the people. And it's always a shame when a man of God is not worthy, but that man was worthy. And many others, I'm sure you know of people who have been great men of God who deserve the honor that befell them when they passed. Well, my friends, one thing we can say as we think about Jacob as he's laid to rest up here in the land of Canaan, in the field of Machpelah, there's one thing that we can remember about him. Many things in life he did. He had a long life. He said it'd been few days and full of evil. That was his take on it. But he had an eventful life, to say the least. His years over in the land of where Laban was, his journey back into the land of Canaan, then his journey down to the land of Egypt, the children and many things that they did that affected his life. Yes, his life was eventful and full. There had been many things that broke his heart, as was what he thought was the passing of his son Joseph. And so there are just many things that we could mention in the life of Jacob, his bringing those children into the world, his wives that he had, and then there's handmaids that he went into. Yes, there's much to be remembered about Jacob. But you know, if I had to pick one thing to put on his epitaph or on his tombstone, I would say this. I would say I would write on his tombstone, if I could stand his tombstone in those days and said, all right, David, we want you to write something to go on Jacob's headstone. What would you put there? I would put the words that we find in the Bible, Jacob have I loved. That's what I would put there.